True, yeah, I'm sending Mr. I'm not confused. It's fine. Let me know when we're rolling. We have reached nearly the end of the day today, voting day on the 26th of March, the by-election. There is still time if citizens haven't gone out to register, haven't gone out to vote. There's still time to go and vote. Polling stations close at 7 p.m. Now, as we approach the end of the day, the big concern that we're hearing from most polling stations is that of lighting in the polling tents especially, and some of the polling stations that we've seen. There is not adequate light. There is no lighting from ZEC. There are no gas lights, and in a few polling stations, there are candles. This is not what we expect from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. We all know that voting ends at 7 p.m., so we expect them to have modalities in place to ensure that there's adequate lighting. In this ward, currently we are here in Harare West, where we've had two major problems. The first one surrounds the voters' roll, where citizens are coming to vote and they're told that their names don't appear on the voters' roll, which is a phenomenon we've experienced throughout the country. The further issue that we've seen is about the unilateral moving of a polling station. We had a big polling station, 10C over there. It's now been moved all the way out to Westgate. So a number of citizens, over 100, have come here wanting to vote at that tent, and they're told that, they have to go several kilometers away. ZEC did not notify the citizens, it did not notify stakeholders that they were moving the polling station in this way. Again, this is another attempt, we say, to suppress the vote and undermine the citizens' right to vote. Now, as I've indicated earlier, we had a few isolated incidents of violence, especially in Kwekwe, where ZANU-PF thugs beat up some of our polling agents. We've had instances where ZEC officials have stopped our polling agents, denied them from entering the polling station, and they only then were allowed to enter much, much later. They weren't allowed to enter yesterday, and yet they're supposed to supervise the opening of all ballot material. We've had issues with the indelible ink, which is not supposed to be easily washed away with water. We've had challenges with that. In fact, in certain constituencies, in certain wards, we've had an issue with inadequate polling material on the part of ZEC. They don't have enough ink, or in some instances, they don't have enough forms. And so right now, the major concern for the CCC as we approach the end of the vote is the security of the vote. How is the vote going to be transported? We need the names of the polling officers, and our polling agents in all the polling stations throughout the country are keeping close guard to ensure that ZEC and ZANU-PF don't get up to any dirty tricks, because we know that a lot of the rigging takes place when we've got the transportation of polling material. So that's a huge concern for us. Lastly, the issue that I wish to raise relates to the forth their personal details. Now, constitutionally, this is not acceptable. There has to be security and privacy around your vote. In fact, we were surprised that ZEC actually issued around the voter is that important. They should not be demanding people's personal information. In fact, a number of citizens refused to give their personal information. In a number of constituencies, we know that this is a well-known intimidation tactic. Now, the final issue I want to draw attention to relates to some of the issues we've had in more remote areas, in your rural constituencies. For example, Mutasa Central, where we've got an issue with headmen whose names have been supplied, who are rounding up voters, telling them to pretend to be assisted voters, telling them to go and vote in pairs so that they check that each one checks that the other is voting for ZANU-PF. That's not acceptable. Every person is allowed security in the polling station, and it's one man, one vote, and your vote is your secret. That's the principle constitutionally. So we don't expect that to be happening. We've also had instances in various constituencies where ZANU-PF is still vote buying on election day. People being told, come and get your mealie meal. When you come and collect your food hamper, we had that instance in one of the constituencies in Harare. Come with a photo of your ballot slip with, voting for ZANU-PF, and then we'll give you a hamper of food. That sort of vote buying violates in clear terms the provisions of the Electoral Act. So we don't expect that to be taking place. So as the day closes, obviously, as the CCC, we're happy with the turnout that's taken place. Happy in the sense that it is a by-election. So statistically, we It won't be the same as a general election, and obviously the voters' roll closed around the first week of January, so a number of voters won't have been able to vote for that reason. But as we march towards proper to conduct an election, and what we've gathered so far is extremely disappointing, extremely disappointing. Shambolic voters' roll, poor conduct on the part of ZEC, etc. So thank you very much. We'll be giving you further updates.
Just to follow up,
sure.
You spoke about poor lighting. Do you have any contingent plans to
So what our polling agents together with candidates are doing, they're trying to make a plan B. In fact, they are making a plan B because this is the most important part of the election, when the votes are being counted and the security and transportation of the vote. So we are making contingency plans, but it is the responsibility and mandate of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. We don't expect this in a free and fair election in a constitutional democracy.
And in regards to the issue of your polling agents, some of your polling agents not being allowed into polling stations, which you indicated happened yesterday, did you raise that with relevant authorities?
Absolutely.
And what was their response?
Absolutely. We actually had to go as far as sometimes getting our lawyers, but going to the presiding authorities, the presiding officer, to ensure that our polling agents are allowed. You know, the big difference between this election and the 2018 election is the appetite and readiness and preparedness by the CCC to defend the vote. We've got polling agents in 100% of the polling stations, and ZEC just did not expect that. So that's why we're seeing this backlash. In fact, when a lot of our polling agents stood up to the authorities and said, no, we're accredited, we